Welcome to the C-Files, folks. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to reduce these videos down to probably once a week. If I do more than that, that's a bonus. Things have been too busy, and I have other obligations that are higher than making these videos. There are plenty of people on YouTube that are making money at doing this, and some of them have some pretty good channels. But if you want to stay with this channel, I will do something once a week. And what I'm going to do is different than what most people are doing on YouTube. And I'm going to apply scripture to what we're seeing in the world today. And I'm not talking about Bible prophecy. I'm talking about practical, everyday living and principles by which people should live by. And today we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16. Just a short portion of scripture, and then we'll talk about current events. These 6 things the Lord hates. 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, that's number 1. A lying tongue, that's number 2. And hands that shed innocent blood, number 3. A heart that devises wicked imaginations, number 4. Feet that be swift in running to mischief, number 5. A false witness that speaks lies, so that's lies in 2 different ways. So there's their 6 versus 7. So is that what I say, 6? Yeah. And he that sows discord among the brethren, that's 7. So the reason there's 6 and there's 7 is because 2 of them are related. So they count as 1, but they're actually 7 because it's 2 different versions of the same thing, lying. So one line is just lying. The other line is being a false witness, like in a court of law, like perjury or something of that nature. Or not just lying, like telling a lie, like, is so-and-so home? No, he's not home, because you're trying to protect someone or something. But lying in that you are bearing false witness against someone else. This can happen on the internet, where one person slams another person on the internet, maybe a schoolmate or somebody like that, and they're going behind their back and they're talking about all this stuff on the internet about them. And some of it's lies. It's just designed to hurt the other person. That's bearing a false witness. Or it could be perjury in a court of law. But the Lord hates these things. He hates pride. Pride. Like, I am all that, right? The kind of pride where we're lifting ourselves up, where we are exalting ourselves. That is the type of pride that God hates. He hates lying. Why? Because God is truth. He's a lot of things, but one of the things that he is truth. He is incapable of lying, and he hates lying. Hands that shed innocent blood, murder. He hates murder. Why? Because we're made in the image of God. Why would he not count, the slaughter of a cow to bring meat to the marketplace? Why would that not be considered murder? Because a cow is not made in the image of God. But men and women are made in the image of God. And that's the difference. And so God hates the shedding of innocent blood. In other words, it's not 2 soldiers killing each other in a wartime. That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about law enforcement shooting a suspect that's threatening their life or the life of someone else, and the threat is imminent. And if the officer doesn't if he doesn't act to protect that person, the suspect would kill that person. That's not what God is talking about. He's talking about straightforward murder. someone goes after someone who's done nothing again, as far as threatening them, and they just kill them. God hates murder. He hates a heart that devises wicked imaginations. What is wicked imaginations? Anything that does not fall within the boundary lines of what God says. For example, God gave us two genders, male and female. That's how he created us. Biologically, male and female. Anything that goes outside of those lines is wicked imagination according to God's word, according to what the Bible says. You say, I don't believe the Bible. Well, okay. I mean, that's up to you, whether you believe the Bible or don't believe the Bible. That's between you and the Lord. But this is how it works. What you do in your privacy is between you and the Lord. What you do in public is between you, the Lord, and the public. Everyone else who's in the public. Because it affects the public. You march a gay pride parade down Main Street, that's public. And it affects other people in your community. So now they have a right to be involved in this as far as saying we don't like that or we do like that. But you're doing it in public, now the public's going to be involved. You have to understand that. Feet that are swift running to mischief. Every teenager that has ever been into mischief understands this one. You're going out and you're doing stuff that your parents told you not to do. You're going to that party that you're not supposed to go to. You're out, racing your car when you shouldn't be doing it. Teenage stuff, mischief. Well, adults, people even my age, can be involved in mischief. Things that we shouldn't be doing. Husbands stepping out on their wives. Husbands going to the bar instead of taking care of their family at night. That's mischief. A false witness that speaks lies, we talked about that. He that sows discord among brethren. The person in the church that causes discord by their mischievousness. God hates those things. Now, a lot of what I just gave you out of the scriptures, that was out of Proverbs, has been occurring politically in our nation. There's been a lot of lying coming out of our federal government. I'll focus on the federal government. You can say the same of state governments and so forth, but we'll focus on the federal government because that's where the focus is right now, because the inaugural is coming up in just a few days. A lot of false witnessing against others has come out of our federal government. A lot of purposeful deception has come out of our federal government. Okay? The news media has been involved in false witness because they have been lying to us and trying to misdirect us through propaganda. And they have done these things to push us off in the wrong direction. So while we're looking over here, they can, the government and the media can do something over here. So a lot of misdirection through lying and deception. Murder. Okay. There have been a lot of accusations of the government being involved in assassinations and certain people in the government being involved in silencing people who are whistleblowers, even up to the point of committing murder. There have been accusations of that. Pride. Well, there's a lot of pride and arrogance because people get positions of power and they have their highfalutin degree. I got a PhD, I got 2 PhDs, and so therefore I'm better than you. You heavy equipment operator that has a high school education. You're beneath me. That's pride. That's just arrogance and pride. The only reason we have anything we have in this life is because God granted it to us. And if God didn't grant it to us, then that's God's determination. And nobody should be prideful about any of that. Okay? Now, so we see a lot of these things occurring out of our government. And the government needs to be cleaned up. And a lot of people are hoping that with this incoming administration, that the inauguration will occur on Monday, the 20th, that a lot of the cleaning up will begin to occur. Well, we'll see. We'll see what actually happens, because it's a fight, it's a war, it's a battle politically to be able to do all of that. But I can tell you some of the things they'd like to be able to do. They'd like to shrink the government and make it more efficient. And this is what they're looking to try to do. They would like to take the Internal Revenue Service and fundamentally transform it and turn it into the External Revenue Service. I don't believe that they're looking to fire people out of the IRS unless they have done things that deserve being fired, like corruption, lying, breaking policy, or anything like that. You know, those the type of things that anyone would be fired for. But I think they're looking to take the skill set that the Internal Revenue Service has been using to crack a whip on the backs of the American people and to burden us with taxes and be very efficient in doing that, to take that and take it off of the American people and direct it toward the globalist oligarchs who have been using them for that purpose. I believe that this is what Trump wants to do, because he talks about the External Revenue Service. It was in Epoch Times, I was reading about it, and how they would be used to collect the taxes from foreign governments, a lot of it globalists, including like the city of London, which is that mile area that people say is not a part of London, but a part of a globalist centerpiece, if you will, and taxing them. We call it tariffs, but it would be taxing them on the goods that they bring into our country and making them pay. Isn't it interesting that we, for example, in Ukraine, we send weapons, we send all of this military assistance, and then we send them money? Who does that? If I'm going to provide a service for someone from a business standpoint, I don't pay them so that I can go provide the service for them. They pay me so I can go provide the service for them. I had a plumber come in the other day to fix a faucet issue, and I paid the plumber. The plumber didn't pay me for the privilege of coming into my home and fixing my faucet. All right? So this is just simple, logical, everyday common sense that Trump is using to say, if we're providing a service for these other nations, then they should pay us for it. Makes perfect sense. Japan comes into mind because Japan, after World War II, was very pacifist for good reason. I mean, they had just suffered tremendously because of the warmongering of their politicians and the emperor and so forth. And so they wanted to go the other direction, but they swung the pendulum way over to the other direction, to the point where they were completely and utterly and totally dependent upon the United States for their livelihood and their protection. They focused on economic issues and worked to build Japan economically, and they did a phenomenal job at that. And in the 1980s, when their cars were beating out our cars, we felt the impact of their ability to do that. and to build economically, build a good quality product and send it over here, import it, and Americans gravitated toward those products because they were better built than the American products in the 80s. So they did a good job, but what they didn't do is they did not build a protection for their nation. They were wholly dependent upon the United States for that. And that was a part of the agreement that occurred after World War II. Well, now the Trump administration wants to change that. He wants to make Japan more self-sufficient and say, look, we understand what was going on after World War II, but it's time for you to step up and to build your own military to protect your nation, because China has become a threat. And the ASEAN nations, like Japan, like Korea, like Cambodia, like Laos, like Vietnam, like the Philippines, these nations, Asian nations that banded together to form ASEAN, they are starting to say, look, we've got to band together with our militaries, and we've got to face the China threat against us, because, fishing boats are being harassed. There's disputes over islands in the southern Philippines. Filipino fishermen have been harassed by Chinese Coast Guard ships that have come into Philippine territory and harassed Philippine fishermen, Philippine sailors on the boats fishing. And they claim, oh, this is Chinese territory, but it's within Philippine territorial waters. And so there's your threat. A sea lane threat and a sea territorial right threat, where your own country's commerce cannot go out and fish and then bring it in for commerce in the nation. That's a problem. Keeping the sea lanes open is a big issue. You have to have the sea lanes open and safe for trade among the nations. And that's why the Navy is so important. The U.S. Navy has been very important for many years, even through the Cold War, for keeping the sea lanes open, for all the nations to be able to transit these areas safely. And China is now making a threat against the sea lanes in that area of the world, the Southeast Asian area. Or I'm sorry, Southwest Asia. Anyway, so you can see the integral problems that we're dealing with. And that's just in foreign policy, not even, dealing with the internal issues in the United States. We have a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and you need wisdom to handle those problems. You need men and women, number one, that are dedicated to handling those problems, which we have not had. And you need men and women who are serious-minded, which we have not had. And you need men and women who will go to work to tackle the problem, and they will do it with wisdom, and they will listen to wise counsel, and they will do it the best way they know how, with wise counsel. We have not had that, but we're about to have it. So the point is that Monday, as it comes up, because we're sitting at the end of Thursday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, everything changes. It's going to be a completely different dynamic, and I think the nation's going to feel it pretty fast. The Department of Justice is going to be held accountable if they are not protecting the American people the way they're supposed to. If they are harassing the American people and attacking the American people and allowing others who are threatening the American people to just have free reign in our country, then starting January 20th, 2025, they are going to be held accountable for that mismanagement of the Department of Justice. We could talk about if it's intentional or unintentional. I think at this point, I mean, it doesn't really matter as far as going in and getting the job done. If it is intentional, and we learned that, then yes, those people should be brought to justice. If it's unintentional, then the problem needs to be fixed, and the problem needs to be fixed regardless if it's unintentional or intentional. And looking to the past and saying, well, J6, 2020, yes, we still have people that need to be, who are my opinion, political prisoners that need to be freed, and their stories need to be told. And the people who are actually really responsible for that act that occurred January 26, 2020, they need to be brought to justice. They have not been yet, but I believe they will be. So, yes, in that sense, we need to look back at that and make what was wrong, make it right. But to dwell in the past and to dwell on revenge and to dwell on all the bitterness that wells up from that, that is self-destructive, and we can't do that. We have to fix what was wrong, bring justice where justice needs to be brought, and then move on and look to the future. And I believe that the Trump administration wants to do that. I think they want to look toward the future. So what would that look like? Well, it won't look like 15-minute cities, and it will not look like what the globalists, what I've been reading in Klaus Schwab's books, 2 of them I have back here. It won't look like what he envisioned in his books in the World Economic Forum. It will look like freedom. It will look like liberty. It will look like people who have a financial tax burden on their backs be freed from that tax burden. It will look like people who have had censorship on their backs as far as trying to just have conversations like this and speak their mind, and being shut down because they're not speaking what the government determined they are allowed to speak, being censored and shut down. That comes to an end January 20th, 2025. So the government, this was just a backdoor way into a social credit score. That's all it was. Well, if you don't say the right things the way we want you to say them, then we will kick you off the platform and we will censor you. That's what has been happening. So it's an assault against free speech. The election shenanigans, that's going to be over. The move will be toward paper ballots and same-day election and results coming out that night. The machines will be gone. No more hacking machines. No more shenanigans playing around with the election. And you might see a big change in California if that were to happen. But see, here's the thing. These are things that the Trump administration wants to do, but they're going to have to work hard to get it done because they're going to have opposition. So why would they have opposition on things that just seem reasonable? One word: money. The love of money is the root of all evil. Money will bring ruin and destruction, if it's corrupt money, to an entire nation. And we have been experiencing the ruin of our nation because of corrupt money, because of bribes, because of blackmail, because of greed. And so for the nation to survive and to overcome this evil this overshadowing evil that has permeated the nation, we have to get our morals straight. And that's something that when I was in the Boy Scouts, morally straight was in the Boy Scout creed, right? So you have to now we can't say that about them anymore well, because of wokeism. But anyway, I digress on that. We need to be morally straight. We need to be men and women of integrity. And if we're not men and women of integrity, then our nation will continue down the road to ruin. And so integrity is number one. And so we need to bring people in to clean up this mess that are men and women of integrity. That won't be the 6 and 7 things that God hates that I just gave you out of the book of Proverbs. They won't be arrogant and prideful, but they will be humble and they will listen to wise counsel. They won't seek to be the policemen of the world and run around the world starting wars everywhere. They will be peacemakers, and they will want people to be able to live their lives without the threat of war. But at the same time, they won't be unwise and just let their guard down so that someone else who's a warmonger can just run rodshod over us. We won't become a doormat to warmongers elsewhere. We will have a strong defense, and we will stop them if they try that stuff on us. But we need to stop doing that stuff on others. Wars, because the military-industrial complex wants to make money. Money wars. That really, they make up some excuse. They use psychological warfare to convince the American people that we need to go to war here, we need to go to war there. When Trump is teaching us that, no, there's other ways to handle stuff, to handle situations. We can't just be a military power. We also have to be an economic power. We also have to be a political power. We have to use wisdom in our dealings with foreign nations, wisdom which has been lacking in the State Department. Well, it needs to be injected back into the State Department, and we need to be wise men and women of integrity who will do the right thing. And I believe that the trend in the nation is trying to push in that direction because people are sick and tired of it. So this assault against the American people will begin to stop. The threat from the outside, from China and others, will be held at bay. Other nations will be responsible for their own protection. Doesn't mean that we won't come and assist them if they need assistance, like we did in World War II. But it means that if we do so, there's going to have to be a very, very good reason for it. Like it actually is a righteous act on our part to protect an innocent nation that's under assault by a nation that is warmongering because of some reason that is unrighteous. That's the only time we should get involved. But we can't get involved in everything. We have to begin to limit that. And in the meantime, while we're pushing things overseas, we're being invaded on our southern border. That's going to end too on Monday. That comes to a stop. And how can Trump, deport all these people? Folks, it's not that hard. We're living in an information age. We're living in an age where there's facial recognition. We're living in an age where, I can't go to work for someone without my information being stolen by hackers. If we can do that, we can find these people. My information was stolen out of the Bureau of Personnel in Washington, D.C. because of my military service. I had to go through two background checks for clearances while I was in the military. secret clearance. So they stole information out of there. Stolen out of CalPERS and stolen out of UCSD, University of California, San Diego. I worked for them for a while, and they got hacked, and my information was stolen. CalPERS got hacked, the retirement system, and my information was stolen. So, I mean, if hackers can do that, can't we hire a bunch of these guys to find the people we need to find? Can't we use facial recognition? I mean, in this day and age, it's not that tough of a thing. Okay, employers are going to have to provide legitimate paperwork when they're hiring people. If they can't do that, then okay, now they're coming under suspicion. It's not that difficult. All these hotels that are being filled up in New York and other places with these migrants. Okay, we know where they are. It's not that hard to go in and just say, okay, guys, the game's over. You're leaving the country. It's not that tough. But the news media would have you think it is. They want to make a big thing out of everything. They want to blow everything out of proportion. Now, the hearings, the confirmation hearings. A little bit of advice to the Democrat senators. You might want to stop digging your hole, because you might dig your hole so deep that you're not going to be able to climb out of it. You're destroying your own party by playing, your little psychological tactics as usual. You are burying yourself, and I don't know if your party's going to survive. I don't. I would love to see your party transform and come back to where it was when John F. Kennedy, a Democrat, was president. It was a different party back then, although the Southern Democrats I had issues with when it comes to, the Jim Crow laws and things of that nature. So, yeah, issues with that. But anyway, the Republican Party it's been cleaned up. The Republican Party has been cleaned up, and because it's gone more populist, nationalist, and the corruption in the party is being rooted out. And now the corruption in the Democrat Party needs to be rooted out. And we need to get back to sensible statesman type of governance. The type of governance that was indicated in the Federalist Papers, which I have over here. I've been reading on the Federalist Papers. Where are they? Do I have them here? Nope, I put them back up over in the shelf. But I've been reading on the Federalist Papers, taking a course on the Constitution. They're right up here. I see them. Let me grab those for you. So this is the Federalist Papers. Been reading through this because I'm taking a course on the Constitution from Hillsdale College, and I'm learning things I didn't know about the Constitution, and I spent a lot of time studying it. It's an amazing document. We don't want to destroy it. We want to keep it because it's an amazing document. It just needs to be implemented the right way. And I believe we're going to get back to that. In the days of just ignoring the Constitution and the Supreme Court by certain justices because they're globalists and they wanted international law to reign and the Constitution basically just go away because that was their ideology, that's done. That's over. We're getting back to our roots. And nations all over the world are getting back to their roots. And I'm glad to see it. Now, I just want to say that doesn't mean that Christians can sit back on their laurels. Because we have a job to do, and it's different than the political stuff that's going on in Washington. And it's the job of building God's kingdom. And so you have two powers. You have an ecclesiastical power, which is the power of the authority in the church. and you have the civil power, which is the authority in the government. And they are separate from one another. And that's what I think it was Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote to the Danbury Baptist, that's what he was talking about. Is that you have an ecclesiastical power and you have a governmental power. And when Christ said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, that's the governmental power. Render unto God what is God's, that's the ecclesiastical power in the church or authority. And the government has no business dictating to the church. And the church has no business requiring the government to come under ecclesiastical authority. God designed them as two different authorities. But that doesn't mean that the government can just go off and be as corrupt as it wants to be, because it has no, it doesn't have a church authority over it, so therefore it can just do whatever it wants and be as corrupt as it wants and be as outside of God's laws that it wants to be, because God himself will hold that government accountable for that. Because God still reigns over the affairs of men, whether men believe it or understand that or not. It's a fact. And that's why we see government in Washington, D.C. that has been very, very corrupt coming to their day of judgment, because God has determined it. And when God determines it, there's no man that can stop it. So sit back, folks, and watch, because you're about to go for a ride, and it's going to be over the next 4 years. And it's not Trump's ride, it's the ride that God is going to take us on. Trump is just an instrument that God is using for this purpose. But he's not the only instrument that God is using. He's the one that has all the focus on him right now. So let's see what God's going to do over the next 4 years, and see if he makes America a better place, or if he just brings his judgment down upon us. It's going to depend on us. It's going to depend on us and how we respond to God and what kind of relationship we have with God. Remember at the beginning when I said it's between you and God? That's true. And so it might be a good idea to get right with him and do that which is right in the eyes of the Lord, so that he might bless our nation, rather than do that which is wrong in the eyes of the Lord, so that he might judge our nation. Thanks for watching. God bless. I'll see you next time, or maybe next week, on the C-Files. And by the way, I may do one after the inauguration and talk about that a little bit. God bless. I'll see you next time on the C-Files.